Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are meeting together because PGE Group has published financial and operational results after the third quarter. My name is Małgorzata Babska and I am the spokesperson for PGE Group, and I have the pleasure to host today's conference. This is a hybrid meeting. Some of the journalists have joined us here in the room, but most probably most of you are following us online, so welcome. I am joined by the members of the management board, the CEO, Wojciech Dąbrowski. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And the CFO, Lechosław Rojewski. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And Piotr Sudoł, head of the financial division of the PGE. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And since it's 10 o'clock. I believe we can start, and I give the floor to the CEO, Wojciech Dąbrowski. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, as you have noticed, our presentation is definitely in different colors. We have changed it in accordance with the new brand, which is part of the new business strategy of our group that was approved last year. Recently, we've completed our image campaign, and we're very happy that it was well received by the public, by you journalists. You approved our proposal. We really want our group to be perceived as the company that is changing and is able to support their customers in the changing environment. Today, we are working on increasing the scope of information provided to our shareholders under ESG. We want to follow the requirements, but also set the best standards. I'd like to emphasize that again, the reporting system in our group has been appreciated, and PGE has been awarded the first prize as the company in the Best Annual Report competition 2020, organized by Accounting Institute, and the award was given for the whole reporting of PGE, consolidated financial report and integrated report. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank Director Osapchuk, who is responsible for coordinating those activities. Ladies and gentlemen, we know how big is the task of transforming the biggest energy group in Poland. Right now, we are building the strength of PG Group based on renewable resources and low emissions sources. And we know that we have the strategy, we have the tasks ahead of us, and we believe in the direction that we set forth. And we will see the effects of those actions in a few years, and that is confirmed by the 5th position in the ranking of the biggest top 500 Eastern and Central Europe, where the companies from our part of Europe are awarded. And it is crucial for us to inform about our achievements and summarize the achievements during the quarterly meetings and conferences, such as the today's one. So, well, we continue the offshore wind energy projects. This is now the biggest and the most money-consuming part of our activity. Recently, we've signed in this room on the 18th of November exactly. We signed with Enea and Tauron an agreement for conditional sale of shares in the project companies with the aim to receive licenses for offshore farms on Baltic Sea. This will be the next stage of licenses distribution. We also want to focus on offshore projects, and under this contract we will be doing 3 projects with Enea and 1 with Tauron on the Baltic Sea. And now, as regards the projects that are done with our Danish project, we continue working on the biggest wind farm on Baltic Sea, 2.5 gigawatt power. We've started together with Ørsted, we started the process of individual negotiations with the European Commission regarding the determination of the individual price in contract for difference for the joint offshore wind farm project, and we hope that we are working on obtaining the further necessary decisions and permits related to the development of the Baltica 1 project. So 2.5 gigawatt is done together with the partner, and 1 gigawatt will be completed by us individually. But we do not exclude potential cooperation with a partner. So under Baltica 1, where we have location and connection licenses, we are right now obtaining further necessary decisions and permits related to the development of the Baltica 1. We are actually looking for the companies who will do the environmental reports in order to receive the environmental permit, and we would like to complete it next year. Our strategic goal reflected in our strategy is achieving at least 6.5 gigawatt of installed power by 2030, and the total power of our projects right now is 3.5 gigawatts, so the remaining 3 gigawatts will be done with the help of Tauron and Enea. Now maybe individually as well, this will depend on the final decision of the Ministry of Infrastructure that will decide about awarding the license applications. We are also working on the 19th of October, we've signed a letter of intent with Ustka regarding the possibility of locating a service port in Ustka. And we would like to do the service operations for our farms in the future. This is the first stage. We will see about the licenses during the next phase, and we hope that the PGE will be awarded such locations, and we may be operating from this port to service other farms. We are also cooperating with the Institute of Scientific Machines of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Gdańsk. This is the implementation of a project in the field of airflow through offshore installations. We will be able to better locate the turbines on the Baltic Sea and be more efficient this way. This is a very interesting project. So investments in the renewable energy and energy storage. This is yet another area that is our focus for in the future. Those projects are implemented according to the strategy that we've approved. We developed the PV project, and we are now working on the concentrated farms. We will be preparing for the implementation of the PV Augustynka farm with a capacity of 25 megawatts in the Podlaskie Voivodeship. This is planned to be commissioned in 2023. We plan other investments in this area. It is interesting that PGE supplies green energy to more customers. Since recently we've signed a contract with Raben Group, and PGE will construct PV farms that will fully meet the group's needs in Poland for green energy. We also invest in a service center for our future renewable energy projects. And at the turn of 2021 and 22, we plan to launch a service center for servicing wind farms and PV farms of the PGE Group in the vicinity of Bełchatów. As you know, we will need more storages, energy. That's why PGE will invest in the pumps as well, pumped storage power plants that are a good solution. Today we are the leader on the national market of the pumped storage power plants. 90% of powers in this energy is held. We've signed a letter of intent with the Ministry of Climate and Environment and the National Fund for Environmental Protection and Water Management, aiming to start development of and implementation of joint projects connected with the pumped storage powered plants. And now, district heating. This is a very important area of our operations. The development of district heating sector is one of our priority, which is also reflected in the strategy that you know very well. We are consequent in implementing new investments that will bring us closer to total decarbonization of heating in the PGE group. We have just laid the foundation stone for Nowa Czechnica CHP in Siechnica near Wrocław. This investment leads to decrease the emissions generated by our sources in district heating. We are also constructing new peak capacities at the Gdańsk CHP. In December, we are commissioning the first new zero emissions electrode boilers in Poland. We are also preparing for the construction of a 62 megawatt reserve and peak gas boiler plant at the Chorzów CHP. The plant commissioning of the investment is 2023, and we are planning to stop using coal at all. In the years 2023-24, we will be commissioning installations resulting in full or significant shift from coal in majority of locations. We just plan, our goal is to shift from coal in district heating, and we are very consequent in developing it and implementing it. So gas capacities, this is not just about district heating, but also flexible powers adding to the generation mix. We are implementing our plans in line with the PGE's group strategy of the project to build 2 CCGT units at Dolna Odra PP. Commissioning of the investment is planned for December 2023. We will be laying the foundation stone for the gas investment at Dolna Odra PP. Over 40% of the project implementation has been achieved. This is the progress, and the commissioning will happen in December 2023. This is the most important PGE energy investment in Pomorze Zachodnie. This will support the energy transformation. This will use renewable energy sources and will ensure energy security for our country. Many questions that you've sent to us, many questions that you've asked us, An interesting project is the creation of National Agency for Energy Security. So this PGE strategy and this wide extent of investments, decarbonizing Polish energy generation would not be possible without something that we have communicated. In this crucial process, we are reaching important decisions. We are continuing reorganization of the PGE structures in order to prepare our assets to be separated for the National Agency for Energy Security. During this quarter, Szczecin heat power plants became part of a segment, and we also separated Dolna Odra. So all gas projects will be kept by PGE, just as I've said, and the resources powered by coal will be sent to the NABE, National Agency for Energy Security. Together with Enea, Tauron and Energa, we've selected an advisor in the process of separating coal assets. This will be KPMG Advisory. So we hope that the experiences that we already have will help us to complete the whole process according to the timeline. The main task of KPMG is advisor in the area of NABE strategy and financial model, structuring of asset sale transaction, development of the NABE operating model, as well as concentration and notification consulting. And now the transformation slash Fit for 55 package. This means a series of issues connected with this area, with this motto, that don't really sound very optimistic to us, although there are some lights in the tunnels. Legislatively, and this package is being debated according to the European Commission, and that the decarbonization should base mostly on electrification, but on renewable energy sources. This one. So it seems clear that as part of the reform, the package, this will be the main focus. But it is also told that this will include transport as well, so that we should not be overloading it. We should not overload the reduction possibilities of energy sector in relation to other sectors. That is connected also in the aspect of different starting points of the member states and the unique situation of Polish sector, which still bases mostly on coal. Although the use of coal is dropping year by year. Major changes for district heating under the Fit for 55 package are also important. We are the biggest district heat producer, and unfortunately we have to say that also here Commission is not really understanding the specificity of individual member states. As you know, Poland is very unique country when it comes to the district heating in Europe and globally. And those solutions proposed by the European Commission make our transformation on district market more difficult and will obstruct further shifts and transformations. So we are a very active part of the discussions, and we hope that the uniqueness of Poland will be taken into account. The expectations right now and the objectives of this package are that we will shift to renewable energy sources in a few years, but this is unrealistic that it will happen in just a few years, that we will be hitting big cities using the renewable resources. But we hope that our uniqueness will be taken into account and solutions will be approved, that we will be able to shift and change according to our situation. So that's all that I wanted to say right now. Later on we will have Q&A session. We are, as usual, very open to your questions. And now I would like to ask the CFO to take over. The CFO Lechosław Rojewski to take over and present the financial results after 3 quarters. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a presentation about the financial results, and I will divide it into 2 parts. And the first part will be about the current situation during the 3rd quarter of 2021, and then I will shortly tell you about the prospect for 2022. Let me start with the situation in the national electricity market. As you can see on the slide, the consumption in the 3rd quarter 2021 was bigger by 2 terawatt hours, and that was mostly because a bigger demand for electricity during that time, and it also translated into the growing export balance. So the bigger export than import. During 3rd quarter, export was up by 1 terawatt hour. What was involved here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it was mostly connected with the growing prices of fuels and the natural gas, and therefore Poland, as compared to the neighboring European countries, offered the electricity price of 404 zloty per megawatt hour. In Germany, it was 440 zloty. So in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, it was 455 zloty, and in Sweden it was 413 zloty. And it is, of course, a unique occurrence because we have not had this kind of big export to European markets for a long time. However, it was also affected by the growing GDP because during the third quarter of 2021, GDP reached 51%, and as compared to the same time last year and the previous year, it was 1.5% higher. So those two factors affected in the production of electricity that was bigger by 18%, 18.5%, reaching the level of 6.7 terawatt hours. And we had to generate this kind of energy in the conventional system in order to cover the demand. Now, moving to the prices on electricity market, you can see that the determining factor was the growing price of CO2. And now, as you can see, if we refer it to 2020, the energy contracts price was 33 zloty per megawatt cheaper. Whereas the CO2 certificates price was also on a stable level, and that translated into lower unit margins. However, in the 2022 contracts, forward contracts, we can see the growth by 122 zloty per megawatt hour, and this is connected with the growing price of CO2. So for the energy price is mostly the result of the growing prices of CO2. So we are also seeing the spread changes in the third quarter. This was mostly in CDS. We had a dynamic situation on electricity market, a lot of demands, the big demand, and the fuel prices were growing as well. So there was some uncertainty on the market about the future. So everyone wanted to leverage, to hedge the prices under the contracts for 2022. So if we refer the CDS to the fact that we are talking about simplified CDS, we are not taking into account the production fuel prices. So we cannot refer that to the production margins, generation margins. So on the one hand, we have to see that the emissions of resources, production resources, differ because it is different in the case of hard coal and lignite. So summarizing the results after the third quarter, we can say that generally the growth of electricity production reached 6.7 terawatt hour, and 50% of this growth was produced by the PGE because we produced 3.3 terawatt hours, and that translated onto the fact that from the conventional segment, in this segment, we had growth of production in lignite and hard coals. But we have to emphasize that the growing prices of fuel were very important here and affected the price of electricity. Now, actually, referring this to the production sources, we have downturns here because the gas fuel grew. And now let's see the distribution. The distribution grew by 4%, a little bit less than the national demand for electricity. Whereas in the sales to end users, dropped down because mainly as the effect of declining volumes to the largest business clients down by 13%. And now this has been reflected in tariff A and B. But because we've recorded lower temperatures in September, we had a slight growth in district heating, plus 0.3 petajoule. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the key factors behind EBITDA, which show us that during the third quarter of 2021, we generated EBITDA, reportable EBITDA of 2,110,000,000 zloty. And this is a very big growth when we compare it to 2020. And the crucial factor here was the growth of produced energy. First of all, the volume of energy that helped us to generate a bigger EBITDA value, bigger by 943 million zloty. So the total result of sold energy, despite the fact that the price of energy was less by 3.3 zloty per megawatt, well, we sold 890 million zloty worth of energy. And together with the produced volume of electricity, we had to pay significant costs connected with the resources, raw materials, so the fuels that were necessary to produce the energy, but also the cost of CO2. So the total generation cost year on year was minus 105 million zloty. And the lower generation margin was also affected by a lower level on the system services market, but it was offset by the revenues from the power market, 728 million zloty capacity market. So the total effect here was 589 million zloty. This is attributable to services. So the retail sales of electricity to end users, it grew by 121 million zloty year-on-year. Growth was lower than the one in the second quarter, but we have to remember that the second quarter was exactly the quarter with a strong COVID effect. We are not talking about the second quarter, but the third quarter of 2020. And now the distribution margin was higher, was up by 35 million zloty with a significant growth of 4% of volume. Now summarizing, let's move on to the next slide. Now summarizing the third quarter of 2021. You can see that the growth of EBITDA quarter on quarter reached the level of 387 million. So EBIT profit reached 503 million, and net profit reached 285 million. So the reportable EBITDA is higher by 564 million zloty. It was affected by one-off events. So, ladies and gentlemen, so a negative impact of the reclamation provision 508 zloty and rollover of EUA contracts plus 641 million. And with the rollover of the CO2 contracts, I need to say that this is one-off event. We've did it because we've been optimizing cash flows. Now, as regards the result of 2021, this will not affect our result. On the one hand, we had revenues, on the other hand, we had a reserve, and then we will consummate it in the end of the fourth quarter of 2021. And now, let's move to the next slide and CapEx now. CapEx during the Q3 2021 were around 1 billion zloty, and they were lower than last year. That was mostly because we've completed the financial outlays on construction of Block 7 in Turów, but on the other hand, the timeline of individual investments are shifted in time, and we've recorded lower growth of outlays during the third quarter. We have to emphasize something that was mentioned by our CEO, that we will be reaching investments spendings on CCGT at Dolna Odra, and our outlays will be growing. The same will happen in our projects connected with district heating. Also, as regards the district heating, we will have a significant investment outlays in Czechnica CHP, which is just started, but according to the timeline, Czechnica will be commissioned in the second quarter of 2024. Will be fully completed in the second quarter 2022. Now, moving on to our debt. Can we do that, please? So the net debt during the third quarter, you can see that in comparison to the results that were presented after the first 6 months of 2021, the debt is down by 3 billion 370 million, and net debt to EBITDA factor indicator is at 0.29. This translates to strong EBITDA 2.1 billion, which is also supported by CO2 hedging with forward contracts. And of course, cash investment spendings that I've said that the timeline is actually shifting them, moving them forward. And right now they are at the level of 1 billion zloty. Now we also presented the effect of no payments for CO2 permits. So this is the adjustment made by the forward payment for CO2. So because we will have to pay for the CO2, in theory, the spendings from the reserve will be shifted, and as a result, we will add to 2 billion zloty, around 8 billion zloty, so that the debt would reach 10.7 billion zloty. And as a result, this net debt to EBITDA factor would reach 1.2. So we have to remember about that. Remember that this significantly impacts our debt level. But of course, in the context of macro economy, this has no significant effect on our debt. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as I've mentioned in the beginning, maybe shortly about the outlook for 2022, both from the perspective of EBITDA and CapEx. Here we are forecasting, ladies and gentlemen, that this will be a demanding year, but please do not think that this will be a tragic year. This will be a demanding year. Demanding because the situation on the macro economic market shows us that the price of CO2 permits is growing. We also see that the level of that the foreign FX is also growing, but now let's go through the segments. So conventional generation, the average price is growing but the effect of the growing cost of CO2 will also affect our costs. So we are also not expecting that we will be such a big exporter as we are today. Well, because we hope, and the whole world is hoping that the raw material price will stabilize. So, in general, we have to remember that we will move back to net import balance. But with the growing CO2 capacities, this must affect the production volumes, which will be affecting the margins. We are expecting the raw material stabilizing, especially when it comes to the hard coal. So we expect that the prices of hard coal will be stable. We are finalizing the contract with the supplier of this raw material to us. We've signed the contract, so we are not afraid that the price of this material will grow sharply. But as you can see, the district heating will unfortunately be affected by the growing price of CO2. And here we are analyzing the situation, and we can see that the growing cost of CO2 that the increase in cost of CO2 will be a twofold one, and we are also realizing that the average of contracted natural gas may increase by approximately 50%. But in order to be more optimistic in the segment of renewable energy, we expect higher spot prices of electricity. We also expect higher prices of green certificates, and that should positively affect positively the electricity EBITDA. And now, as regards the supply segment, after a good 2021 year, we expect that this will be under the pressure on the growing prices of energy purchase and green certificate purchases. And we also believe that we have to cover the distribution services. And we are also expecting an increasing loss on covering the distribution services of prosumers. So now, as regards the distribution, the regulatory asset base is higher by around 700 million zloty. This will not be as dynamic this year because I have to remember you that the growth was on the level of 8% in 2021. The growth is around 4%. Of course, return on capital, we hope that the average weighted cost of capital will stay on the same level. But at the same time, we expect that also when it comes to distribution, the head of the regulatory office may award bonuses at the level of 1%, and this average weighted cost of capital will be improved, reaching the level of 567 as compared to 555 this year. And now CapEx. We will be more dynamic in spending money connected with the investment outlays, and of course shifting from the conventional energy generation, as the CEO has said. The conventional energy segment will be moved to NABE, and we hope on that a lot, but we expect that the low emissions sources will grow to construction of CCGT units in Dolna Odra, also in Czechnica, CHPP in district heating, and the growth of PVs in renewables. And of course, you have to remember that right now, when it comes to the renewables, we have a huge area of purchased lands, and under investment process we are applying for the licenses to complete the PVs that according to our strategy will bring us to achieving certain power capacity. And now looking at supply and distribution. Well, we have two big areas. So for instance, implementation of grid grounding program and smart metering installation. So we want to install at least 80% of those, and the cable network of medium voltage that will help us to avoid failures. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. So we've just completed the first part that was connected with our results, and now we can move on to Q&A session. If you allow me, we will start with a few questions from our online users, online followers. The first question relates to the outlays, investment outlays, and it is for Mr. Rojewski. What will be the capex in 2022? What will be the level? Ladies and gentlemen, as I've said during my presentation, we are increasing the investment outlays. We are more dynamic in our investments. Investing process in 2022, we will be more dynamically investing in low emission sources, especially when it comes to the construction of two units, CCGT units in Dolna Odra. We will reach the most money consuming time. Also in district heating, we are constructing Czechnica CHPP. we will spend more money on PVs in renewables, and as you know it very well, we are investing in offshore processes. In 2022, they will not be as dynamic when it comes to investment outlays, capex, but we have to remember that we have to prepare for this very intensive investment process, and this will require several million zlotys in outlays. So we expect that the capex in 2022 should be around 7 billion zloty. Thank you very much. Another question is about Tariff G, an important subject, and the CEO, Wojciech Dąbrowski, will tell us about it. Was about 2022, and Prime Minister Sasin said that the energy companies cannot pay the cost anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, we've submitted our tariff applications. We are waiting for the decision of the Energy Regulatory Office. We expected that the costs that we paid and are justified, and they are mostly because of the growing prices of CO2, will be reflected in the next year's tariff. But at the same time, we are big supporter of all solutions that would support the most vulnerable recipients. So as Minister Sasin has said, supporting those vulnerable recipients is very important, so that we do not make them the victims of the decarbonization policy. And we are very happy about the decisions taken by the government. Well, unfortunately, the situation on the market is beyond our control. And this is because the cost of energy production is growing, not just in Poland. Poland has recently been one of the cheapest producer of energy, while this cost is higher in other countries. What we can actually do, and we do in PGE, we invest more in order to ensure our recipients with cheaper energy, which will make us more independent as regards the licenses, CO2 permits, and we focus on optimization, efficiency in order to decrease the cost of generation, so that the energy offered for our customers is as cheap as possible. I have one more question about capex, and this question regards the distribution. What kind of capex do you expect in this segment still in this year and next year? And Mr. Rojewski, in 2021, because we are continuing intensive process of connecting new recipients, we expect that the capex will reach around 1 billion and a half. But next year we will be installing smart metering meters, and we have a timeline set by OSD, the distribution operator. So at least 15% of recipients should be connected by the end of next year. And because of this process in 2028, we should connect 80% of recipients via smart meters. So in the perspective up until 2028, the whole process connected with smart metering will cost the distribution segment about 3 billion zloty. And another intensive investment process in distribution segment is the cabling of medium voltages, and that is mostly connected with the weather impacts, and according to the requirements set by the Energy Regulatory Office, are part of the quality requirements. So we have two main directions, so cable laying and smart metering. Well, thank you very much. We have many questions that were sent to us online, but let me give the floor to those of you who joined us here in the room. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. We will give you the microphone and we'll be happy to answer. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Rafał Zosuń, High Voltage Portal. I have several questions. Let me start with the first one. The capacity auction next year. So can you say what kind of units will be reported for the auction, and do you have financing for that? And the next question is about financing. Can we actually go question by question? It will be actually easier for us. You have prepared your questions. It will be easier for us to remember the question and give you good answers. So now about the auction. There will be 4 units Czechnica, Gdynia, Bydgoszcz and Zgierz. Those units. You asked about Rybnik. It is planned to be launched in 2027, so this is not the subject of 2026 auctions. Czechnica, Zgierz, Gdynia, yes, gas everywhere, yes. And now the second question about financing the first PGE wind farm. The financial advisor has been selected. How about money for this project? What stage have you reached? Now about the advisor. This is Societe Generale. This is the main advisor, financial advisor, and right now we are preparing the documents, and the advisor together with us has created a teaser, and it will be distributed, circulated among financial institutions around the world. And my third question is about CO2 and forwards. You've mentioned that a lot of permits are bought through the forwards. What will be the results if the prices drop down to 50 euro? So you are talking about 2022 or 2023. Well, of course, the conscious management of risk is to hedge the margin instead of searching for additional profits on the forward CO2 forward contract. So we want to sell each megawatt hour in almost real time and hedge the margin by purchasing a CO2 certificate and hedge the euro to PLN sale rate. So if the euro drops down, well, what happens? We don't do that. We are very happy about our margin by selling every megawatt hour and then terawatt hour, gigawatt hour, and then terawatt hour. So we look at the margin, and if CDS level is satisfactory, then we don't look further what happens to this hedged product. This is our policy of managing risk, and we are consequent in doing that. We are not a hedging company, we are not speculators, so we are not having this kind of perspective. So now about accountancy, we use bookkeeping seals. We are fully hedged, and I have a question about the growing prices under C tariff for medium size and small enterprises. What will be the growth of prices under the contracts for 22 and 23? Well, the prices under this tariff will increased in April and August. There is no new decision about the first quarter or the second quarter, so if the change happens, we will inform our customers. What were the increases? in August and in April, matching the market situation. How about the percentages? If you analyze our price list and compare it to our competitors, well, you will have your answer. And now another question about Turów, because Dolnośląskie Voivodeship is demanding that you disclose the timelines for closing down Turów power plant. Is there a chance for that? Well, this is the first that I hear that Dolnośląskie Voivodeship wants this information to be disclosed. They are the host, the owners of this information. Well, of course, as the company, we treat this kind of information as strategic, so we do not disclose it to wider public. The Turów will be working until 2044 according to our objectives. And we do not see any problems. We do not see any obstruction to that process. So we want to keep our personnel safe. And we need to produce energy in this part of Poland, and Turów will be operating until 2044. And this is about the timeline of switching off individual units. Yes, I know that these are, I told you, these were strategic decisions, and we do not disclose them. And those, and the information is owned by the self-government of Dolnośląskie Voivodeship. They reported it to European Commission, and that's all I can say in this case. And also the spokesperson, if I may add something, well, the Marshal has received the timeline of switching off the units in Turów, and the Marshal can provide the information to those institutions that are proceeding the steps of the just transformation of the region. Unfortunately, the further comments are spoken not to the microphone, so this will be their decision. Robert Dominterski, Rzeczpospolita Parkiet. My question is about what you've mentioned about the advisor for NABE process. You've mentioned that they will also be advising you in the notification process. So is it sure that NABE creation will be notified by the European Commission? And if yes, then I'd like to ask about the timeline, because a few months ago you said that if the process of separating the assets fails to be completed within the timeline deadline, then you can lose in terms of the CO2 permits. So now, taking into account a long process, will the notification impact your timeline that you share with the government? So this is the year 2022. This is my first question. Let me stop here. Yes, the advisor also will take part in the notification process mentioned by you. We do not see any threats as regards the timeline. We are discussing those issues with our social partners. This is important. Now, organization can be done very quickly. Of course, we have to receive the consent from our social partners. This is a huge process. This is a groundbreaking process in regarding the future of the electro energy in Poland. We have to have the consent of the social party. Of course, there are some concerns, fears. That's natural, because the whole process can evoke some threats, some concerns, but we are in dialogue with the social partners, and I am quite optimistic about. The most important is to convince them that NABE is necessary, that we need to separate those assets to another unit. So according to Jacek Sasin, who supervises our company indirectly, during one of his recent speeches, he said that NABE would be created in 2022, and we stick to this timeline. And this timeline is still very realistic, and we do everything to meet the objectives. If you allow me, let me add something else. You've mentioned the possibility of losing liquidity, cash flow. Well, there is no threat like that, but NABE is important. It is important from the perspective of external financial resources from winning external financing. You know that what is happening in Poland and around the world, banks perceive those assets negatively now. So in order to continue our investment and acquiring process, it is necessary to show that we move away from the carbon footprint in order to find cheaper money on the market and have bigger debt, because we've mentioned that several times. Banks and financial institutions inform us that they will be willing or we will be able to have more debt without coal assets in our portfolio. Continuing on this, Tomasz Brzozowski, Cleaner Energy. Are the banks giving you the condition that just the separation of the coal assets is necessary to receive financing? Well, we may put it this way, because the condition is not owning any coal assets. So we may say that the banks give us this condition: we will give you more money if you have no coal assets. This is a global trend. This is nothing unique. It's been said for many years right now. So this trend is continued, and more financial institutions are sharing this kind of declaration with the public that they will be supporting financially the institutions without coal assets. So after 2023 we can expect that the capex for renewable energy sources will increase, supported by external financing. Today what we plan in renewable energy resources, the proposals that you know, our investment plans, we have our own ideas for financing it. We can finance it. We are talking about in-depth new investments, and we have money for that. So the investment program for 2022 is not in danger. So we are actually seeing it from the long-term perspective. So increasing the availability of money received from external foreign institutions, those institutions that have a blockage according to their strategy. They block the money for the companies with coal assets. So 2023, after NABE is created, will be easier to reach money. So we have to think who is financing the construction of power plants in China. Maybe these are the same institutions who refuse us the money for construction of this kind of units. So another question, if you allow me, can you specify the level of capacity carried by the renewable energy sources 2022 versus 21? So 2022 versus 21, because the strategy sets forth the milestones. So there are no threats here. So what will be the situation in the end of 2022? So our investment is known to you. We are continuing the acquiring activities, also with regard to the renewable energy sources. So the head of the regulatory office has said that many of the projects, the renewable projects, are not hedged with money. And I know that you have money for that, but we are talking about those who won the auctions, but are unable to create, to be created in the end. Well, definitely, we are analyzing the investments. So we are analyzing the projects, what is happening. How about the capacity level in renewables? Can you declare something? W- Well, 25 will be commissioned in Podlaskie Voivodeship in 2025. We will check that. And the last question, you wanted to receive some financing from the KPO. And are you concerned about what is happening between Polish government and Brussels? Well, this is of a concern to all of us. But I am sure that the decision will be taken, and the national, definitely national investments, including our investments, will be financed by the money, by the recovery plan. And we really want this to be done. But this is a political decision, and we have no control of that. So I understand that the timeline is not in threat. No, what we've said, we have financing for our investments. These are development, big development investments, and so we are not conditioning those investments from the recovery plan money. So thank you very much. This will be the last question. My last question is about the investment in mm, power and heat and power plants in order to produce district heating. Well, in recent years, the situation was not varied when it came to coal inventories. Some of the PGE units had the mandatory inventories that are below the legal thresholds. But of course, a plan was created to replenish the inventories, especially when it comes to Opole. I wanted to ask you if this is not a confidential information, how are you going to replenish those inventories? Well, this is not confidential information. Well, temporarily, the inventories dropped down, but I need to emphasize that the situation is being taken care of. The situation between the companies, also transport companies. Piotr Pyzik, the new minister, joined the table, and he declared that he would be the coordinator of the whole process. So this has happened before in 2018, so this is not the first time it happened. We have to remember that we produce more energy. And this is above the plan that we've planned initially. So our objectives lower and the production is higher, so it's only natural that the transport companies had their timelines, and we also understand the PGG that had a certain production, but this year we do not see any disturbances that could limit our production. So the State Assets Ministry is actively joining the table here and taking care of the situation. And the minister is in Dolnośląskie right now, in Śląskie Voivodeship right now, and talking to the mining group. But this is not the first situation that we had to deal with. So there is a sinusoid sort of. It goes up and down. So we are producing more, they are producing less. But I am sure that the Polish mining group and the transporting company, coal transporting companies will deal with the situation. Thank you very much. And I believe that there are many more questions, but we are limited when it comes to the time for the conference, so we will answer those questions later on. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you during the next conference. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.